Hello, welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. And if this is your first time here, then I appreciate you tuning in. My name is Jamie, and I make various videos of pretty much anything that I feel like doing. I will open my cupboard, see what's in there, and I do the, what can I make out of this thing? So I know a lot of us get in these little ruts where we make the same things, like every week we make the same, 6, 10 dishes, whatever. Or, we don't know what to make. We don't know what to try different, Or maybe we're looking for healthier foods, or we're looking for some good comfort foods, whatever. Maybe I can help you out there. Maybe I can get you a video. I don't know. We'll see. But if you've been following along, I've done meatloaves and pastas and breakfast. I've done the black milk omelets. So today I am doing something a little bit different. My friend and I are going out tomorrow. We are going to look at different historic places and stuff. And we're going to have a picnic lunch. So even though it's just a short while before Thanksgiving, we are doing a picnic. And I volunteered. I have my mother's and my grandmother's like a great recipe for potato salad and macaroni salad. And it's one of those recipes where nothing's wrote down. Everything is measured or done by taste. So I am going to try. I'm going to try really, really hard to measure this stuff out, and we're going to actually get a working recipe for my family's potato salad and macaroni salad. Now, typically, I do tell you, don't go out and buy anything special. Let's just use what you have. Like if I'm using macaroni and you've got spaghetti, use it, whatever. But this one's kind of important, that you do need at least the bare basics for this. And I will tell you a little secret, and some people might go ooh and not like it, but the secret to these salads is Miracle Whip. Do not use mayo. You need that little bit of sweetness that's found in Miracle Whip to make these salads work. And even if you don't typically like Miracle Whip, I would say try this recipe, cut it in half, whatever you have to. Try it at least once with the Miracle Whip and see if you like it first before you switch to the mayo. Because Miracle Whip has that little bit of sweetness that these recipes kind of need. So we're going to do today macaroni salad, potato salad, and I am going to doctor up some baked beans and show you that as well. So stay tuned. Let me get set up here and we'll get started on this. Alright, I had to take a quick second here because this little girl was in here working her head off and she wanted some attention. So smile for the camera. Say hi. Hi. Mommy's making her video. Yes, you can share in the bacon later, okay? Alright, so she just wanted to say hi, so now we'll make her happy, put her back on the couch, let her go back to sleep, and we'll get back to our cooking, okay? Okay, let me explain what I got going on here, because we're going to have a bunch of stuff going at the same time. So, back here, my big pot of water here. Just a dash of salt in it. That is where I'm going to put my potatoes. Up here, I have a smaller pot, a little bit of salt in it. That's for my macaroni. And then back here, I got my tiny, tiny little pan, no salt. And that's where I'm going to make my hard-boiled eggs for the potato salad. Got it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get these babies all turned on here. Start getting some water boiling. In this back pan, now you're going to want to add your eggs before the water gets too hot. Otherwise, when you add it, your shells are going to break. They're going to crack open. Now we are going to use roughly 5 pounds of potatoes. I'm using a russet potato. Only because I don't want them too starchy. Like I don't want them... Do you ever have potatoes, like a potato salad where it was all like just mushy and more like mashed potatoes than a potato salad? We don't want that. But we also don't want like, forgive me, but the Walmart potato salad that is really hard too. So we want somewhere in between that. So that's why I'm using russets. They're a little bit firmer potato without being super starchy. So for 5 pounds, roughly, we're going to use, let's see. So typically I do a 10-pound bag and I use 8 eggs. So let's just do, how about we do 4 eggs. So we're going to throw 4 eggs in here. There's 3. And there's 4. So we're going to get the eggs boiling. Once they're boiling, I'm going to boil them for about 10 minutes. We want to make sure they're hard boiled and not soft boiled. And that's what's going on now. These two, we got to wait till the water starts boiling. In the meantime, I'm going to start peeling my potatoes. Now, I do have the big bag, so I'm going to use, well, I've already used some of it. So I'm going to use most of this bag. I'm going to go ahead and peel them up and then start cutting them. And at that point, I will show you about what size. I usually do about 1 inch for the potatoes, maybe a little bit better. And I got to do something about clipping my hair back because it's going to be in my face today. It's going to be a bad hair day. Sorry about that. So let me go clip this back, scrub back up, and then I'm going to peel some potatoes, and I'll be right back. All right. Got my messy hair bun going on so I can keep that hair out of my face. Got myself all scrubbed back up. Got some of my potatoes here peeled. And so now I'm just going to trim these. Trim them. I got them peeled. I got them rinsed. And I'm going to cut them. And I'm going to show you about what size we want for this. You don't want to go overly large. But you also don't want those tiny, tiny little bites. So I'm going to try to go in between here. Alright, so my first step is I'm going to slice my potatoes lengthwise about that thick. Maybe 1 inch. 1 inch is what I'm guessing. Okay? And then I'm going to slice them about 1 inch that way as well. So out of that potato I just showed you, we get 3 slices. And my eggs are boiling over. Okay. Then from there, we're going to cut them this way, also about 1 inch. You do not have to be perfect on this. Estimate. And as we have it. So we have roughly a 1 inch cube is what we're using. Okay? So we're going to cut those up. Our water's not boiling yet, but we are going to throw these in anyways because it ain't going to be very long and it'll be boiling. Just like my eggs, which apparently have too much water in. If you heard all that sizzling going on, that's what that is. Alright. We're just starting to get bubbles in our other pan here. This is where our macaroni is going to be going. Alright. Cutting up these potatoes again. My 1 inch cubes here. Roughly. You don't have to be perfect on this. Lord knows I'm far from perfect. Alright. So I'm going to finish up with these potatoes. Get them all in the pan. Maybe trim off some water here so my eggs quit boiling over, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we got our potatoes going there in the back. Got our eggs, got a few more minutes yet on them for them to boil. And I got about a half of a 1 pound bag or box, whichever you're using, of macaroni that I just poured into our boiling water. Now, the macaroni is very important to keep it stirring because you don't want your macaroni to be sticking together. So, make sure you stir it often. Okay. So, 5 pounds of potatoes back here boiling away. In my 1 inch cubes. Like so. Can we see this? Okay. And then I have my roughly half a pound of macaroni going here. I mean, you know, I don't measure anything out. I did half of a bag, of a 1 pound bag. So it's roughly a half a pound. Got my 4 eggs back here boiling. They've got about 2 more minutes. So they're hard boiled. Normally I do about 10 minutes on a hard boil. But sometimes I've forgotten and I've left them go as far as 15 minutes. And so if your eggs start cracking open and they're like seeping or something, you know they're done. Time to take them off the burner. Okay. So while this stuff is boiling and cooking up here for us, let's start prepping everything that's going to go into this. So, the first thing is, let's get our Miracle Whip. Alright. Now, for you mayo lovers who are moaning and groaning right now, I promise you it's well worth it to try it. If you don't like it, next time make it with mayo. But this really, the little bit of sweetness that's in Miracle Whip really goes well with this recipe. So I highly encourage you to use Miracle Whip. Now this is a 30 fluid ounce. We are going to need at least one of these and possibly a little extra. I typically buy 2 of these, especially if you're making a bigger batch, or if you're making it ahead of time, like to serve for a holiday later, like the next day or something, because these will hold for about 5 days in the fridge. But after a day, you might see it get a little bit dry, and then you'll have to add a little bit more Miracle Whip. Now, typically what I do when I'm doing half batches, which is what I'm doing, 5 pounds of potatoes and a half a pound of macaroni, I will use a half a jar in each. And then if it looks dry, I'll just add about a quarter of a cup of Miracle Whip at a time until, till it doesn't look so dry. Alright, so we got our Miracle Whip, and I also have a partial jar in the fridge that we will use up as well. And let's see, we need veggies. Okay, so macaroni salad. We have a cucumber, but again, I'm doing a half a batch, so it's only a half a pound. So I will only be using a half of a cucumber. And then we want a couple tomatoes. 2 or 3, I'd say. And what else do we want? Oh, we want onion. Now, I am using the sweet Vidala, how do you say that? Sweet Vidala onion. Probably saying it wrong, so forgive me. And typically, since I'm doing half batches, I will use half an onion for each one. But I've already got one split and ready here, so I'll use that one first. Alright. So, onion goes in both. Cucumber and tomatoes for the macaroni salad. The eggs are for the potato salad. So right now, I am going to cut that in half. Where's my cutting board? There we go. Let's cut my cucumber in half because I'm only using half of it. And then I'm just going to peel that. And don't forget, don't get too busy cutting all your sides up that you forget to stir your macaroni, because we really do not want those sticking together. So always take a minute with my El Cheapo spoon. Doesn't hurt to give your potatoes a quick toss too. Alright. And I guess I don't have one now. Alright, I'll deal with this later, but for now I'm just going to throw it in a sandwich bag and put it back in the fridge. Get rid of the skins off the cucumber. Alright, now the best way I like to do this is I split the cucumber lengthwise, right down the middle, and cut it in half. And then from this point, I'm going to do thirds. So I want this to be cut into 3. That typically makes the perfect size. So we have something like this. Okay. And then we're going to cut them. Again, my typical 1 inch is, I don't know, for some reason I typically do 1 inch. So we're going to cut those up. Just like that. Oh, and there's a piece of skin I left on that one. Don't want that. As you can see, I'm using just a little old paring knife. I am not a professional chef, and if I was, I could never use one of those gigantic chef knives. I'd end up cutting my fingers off. I am not that good with a knife. Alright, so our eggs are done. My 2 minutes ended up being 6. So, these are definitely hard boiled. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to take a colander, dump these, and we're going to let these sit and cool off. Alright, that's it for those. Now this, I am just going to set aside. You know what? We're going to make it easy for cleanup later. We're going to use the paper plates. Alright. There's our cucumbers for later. Now what we could do, once this is pre-prepped, especially if you're making stuff ahead of time for, like, say you got the 4th of July tomorrow, or, you know, you're doing a picnic with your family reunion, whatever. If you're doing this a day ahead of time, you can always prep all this stuff a day ahead of time, or hours ahead of time, however you need to do it. A lot of times I work evenings, so I can do stuff whenever I get home from work, prep it, cover it, put it in the fridge, and then the next morning I can get up and throw it all together. That's a helpful time saver too. Okay, now tomatoes. Again, I hate to be a broken record, but again, we're going to look for about 1-inch cubes on these. Just my thing, I guess. I think that's the perfect bite size, I guess. So when you cut up your tomatoes, again, roughly a 1-inch cube. And a lot of this is going to be personal preference. You know, if you're a big fan of tomatoes, add extra tomatoes. If you're not a big fan of tomatoes, then, you know, just add a couple, or I'd say forego them completely, but it will change the taste of it. But hey, whatever you like. Cooking should be fun. It should not be stressful. Let's get this stirred again. Do not forget to stir that macaroni. You don't want macaroni sticking together, and be careful you don't splash yourself like what I just did. Luckily it missed me and I didn't get burned. Alright. I'm going to finish dicing up these tomatoes. And then I think our macaroni is just about done. So once I'm done with this tomato, I'm going to just set this aside with the cucumbers. I'll probably cover them and throw them in the fridge for now, because this stuff we are going to have to, you know, let it have some time for cooling and mixing everything together. So I'll just cover these up, put them in the fridge, and then we'll deal with them whenever we get to that part, okay? We're just doing our prep now to save time later. Alright, so I've got my eggs. I left them cool for a few minutes, and I just put them in a bowl. That's all I'm doing is letting them sit around and cool off, because I'm not going to burn my hand trying to peel those. So let's get them cooled down. Also, my macaroni is done. It's nice and tender. If you've watched my videos before, you know I do not like al dente, but I also don't want mushy. So this is somewhere in between. Go by your personal preference. If you like an al dente, you know, which is a little bit of a harder consistency, by all means do it that way. If you like yours softer, what if you like yours almost mushy? Then make it almost mushy. That's fine. This is all about what you like, or what your family likes, or what your friends like, whoever you're making this for, okay? Or even if you're just trying new recipes out, you know, for something to do. So mine's just slightly past al dente, and I'm gonna go ahead and drain this. And then for this one, we don't do this for the potatoes, but for the macaroni, we are going to rinse this with cold water. So we want a good rinse. We want to get that starch off of there and rinse it really good. And then we're going to set this aside and let it cool for a few minutes while we're finishing up with our potatoes, and we still got our onions to dice. So, I'll be back as soon as I get these rinsed off. So, I got my potatoes, yeah. Got potatoes on my mind. I've got my macaroni rinsed off, nice and cold. I'm going to let that sit in the bowl off to the side for now. And my potatoes are, well, they're just fork tender, so that's perfect. So overall, they cooked about 15 minutes. We want them just fork tender, okay? Then we're going to drain these. Now, these you do not rinse. I've tried that one time, and it actually changed the potato salad. So we're not going to rinse this. We're just going to drain this, and then we're going to set this aside, and that has to cool completely. So probably about an hour to cool down, and then we'll come back to that. In the meantime, we'll work on everything else. So give me a minute to drain these, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I have my bowl of macaroni sitting aside here so it can cool off. We got our potatoes here sitting aside so they can cool off. Now, a little helpful tip on those is while we're waiting for them to cool off, remember to stir them every now and again, because on the bottom it's going to retain that heat. So you want to bring the bottom to the top, let that cool off. Do it again, let it cool off again, and just keep doing that until everything's nice and cold. It takes about an hour, roughly. Of course, a lot of it's going to depend on the time of year, the temperature of your home, or wherever you're making this. I mean, obviously, if you're making it in a freezer, it wouldn't take that long. But I hope you're not staying in a freezer doing this. Who knows? Maybe you like the cold. Anyhow, same with the eggs. We want to make sure we turn these because on the bottom they're going to stay hot. So keep them turned too. We need all this stuff to cool off. Hopefully within an hour because time's ticking out on me and I have work tonight. So hopefully we'll get that going. In the meantime, we still have our onion to cut up. Somewhere. There it is. Found it. Okay. So, earlier we cut our tomatoes and our cucumber. And we're not doing the egg yet because they're still hot and I do not want to burn my hands. That would not be good. So again, I'm just cutting these up, putting them on disposable plates, covering it with plastic wrap, throwing it in the fridge until we're ready to use it. This is just prepping a little bit while we're sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for everything to cool off. We might as well prep everything, right? Now, this one, you're not going to hear me say to cut into 1 inch because a 1 inch onion is way too big. So we're just going to do a small dice on these onions, okay? Just a small dice on these. I'm using 1 large onion of the sweet Vidala, or however you pronounce that. I have done this with red onions and a yellow onion, and they're fine with those as well. So it can either be personal preference or whatever you happen to have in your fridge. And again, we're going to roughly use about half of this for the potato salad and half for the macaroni salad. Now, if you don't like onions, you can forego this. It does have a little bit, it does make a little bit of a crisp in that, so you have that little bit of crunch in your salad. But again, some people just don't like onions, and that's fine. You do not have to use them. Now, I personally like them. Probably not the way my dad did. My dad, oh my goodness. I remember him taking bread, and he would butter the bread. And then he would slice some thick slices of onions, and he'd put on that bread, and he'd sit there and eat it. An onion sandwich. Now, I don't think I could do that. But I remember Dad sitting at the table eating an onion sandwich. And he liked his onions. Fond memories of my parents. I miss them a lot, but... And Mama didn't think I was listening. I'm sure she didn't. But I was. And it took me a while. a long while. But I'm finally cooking. And I remember some of the old recipes. You know, that she taught me that she got from her mom, and she got from her mom, you know, the family recipes. I think I even have one of the family reunion cookbooks yet. That was probably my mom's. And honestly, I don't know if I've looked at it the whole way through. Just to see what some of those recipes are. But maybe one of these days we'll get dig that out and try some of those. Try some of my family recipes. Alright, there's our onion. Put that on a plate. That's a lot of onion, right? But you'll see, especially once we start adding to the potato salad, you won't even see all that onion in there because there's just so much that goes into the potato salad. Alright, so we're going to cover that up with some plastic wrap. Throw that in the fridge with our tomatoes and our cucumbers. Alright, and I don't imagine in that 5 minutes or so it took me that our stuff is cooled down yet. So, our next thing is I will teach you a secret for baked beans. Now, I'm from Pennsylvania. So, around my area, you typically, not always, but you typically have two types of people. You have your people who love the Bush's baked beans. And then you have your people who like to make their own baked beans from scratch. A lot of them do like a barbecue baked bean. I am... probably not surprising if you've been following my channel. I'm somewhere in the middle. I do like Bush's baked beans, but I'm all about flavors. I love my flavors, and you have to have big, bold flavors to impress me. So I find Bush's lacking a little bit in flavor. Please don't take that personally. So what I like to do is get a can of Bush's baked beans, and I doctor it up myself. Now, you don't have to do this if you like your baked beans the way they are. If you followed my channel, you know that I always, when I do anything with bacon, I make the entire pound of bacon, put them in these little baggies, and I freeze them. And then at some later date, I pull out however much I need. Now, this one, I'm down to the end of the bag because I've been pulling this out and using it here and there. So, this one, I got a little bit of bacon left, and we're going to use that. And, let's see, I have, now this is one of my favorites. This is the country style Bush's baked beans, okay? And the reason I like this one is because it's got the extra brown sugar. But, again, for me, with the flavor palette thing going on here, I can't really taste the sugar in it. To me, I can't taste it. So, I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to make some really delicious, flavorful baked beans, okay? So, first thing we're going to do is open up this can of baked beans, okay? I'll be right back. Alright, so I got my little casserole dish here. I'm just going to pour my baked beans. Now, I don't know if there's just different sizes of these or not. I always just buy the same thing. So, net weight, 28 ounces. So, again, this is Bush's Country Style Baked Beans. I suppose you could use different styles, but since mine, we're putting extra bacon and extra brown sugar in it, this one just works best because it's already got extra brown sugar in it. Even if it's not enough for my palate. Alright. Then I got light brown sugar. Okay, and I am doing a level tablespoon. I'm actually going to do 2 level tablespoons of that. So I'm going to add 2 level tablespoons of light brown sugar. And then I'm going to take my bacon that I prepared before. So if you don't have any that you prepare and can pull out of the freezer, Well, then you haven't been watching my videos, huh? Anyhow, cook up your bacon, get it drained off, get all that fat off of it, and then you'll be caught up with me. So I got about, 2 or 3 pieces here. I'm just going to just dice this up into, small pieces. Kind of about like we did with the onions, just dicing them into small pieces. Give you after I drop it, give you a close up here to see. Just a small dice. That's it. Now, if your bacon turned out a little crispy, you could probably just squeeze it and have it all falling apart on you. Make it a little bit easier not having to dice this up, huh? Okay, now it's a big chunk of fat that I'm getting rid of. I don't need all that fat. I got enough on me. I don't need any more to put in my body. All right. Once you get that all diced up, we're going to add that to the beans. And we're just going to stir this all up. We want to make sure we mix that brown sugar in real good and get that bacon all mixed in. Beautiful. And this will thicken up really nice too. Now you don't want to cover this. We're going to bake this in the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes. Halfway through we want to stir it. But what it's going to do is when you put it in the oven, it is going... I know some people like hot baked beans, some like warm, some like cold. Doesn't matter, even if you like it cold. You have to do the baking so it gets that brown sugar. You don't want clumps of brown sugar in your baked beans. You want that to kind of dissolve right into the sauce. So we're going to bake this at 350 for about 30 minutes. Halfway through, you'll see that it's starting to get a little bit of crustiness at the top. Maybe like, I guess the way to put it would be like it's starting to dry out a little bit. So you're going to stir that. And then at the 30-minute mark, you're going to pull that out, stir it again. And then you can just let it sit to cool off, serve it hot. Let it get to room temperature, however you want yours served. For me, my outing with my friend is tomorrow. So I'll be putting this in the fridge and packing it up to take on our picnic with us. So that is it for that. Let me get that in the oven going. All right. Set my timer for 38 minutes. And then... ooh, I think our macaroni, because we rinsed our macaroni with the cold water, it helped to cool this down quicker. So, I am going to clean this up, get scrubbed up again, and then we'll come back and get started on the macaroni salad while the potatoes and the eggs are still cooling. Okay, be right back. We're going to get started on this macaroni salad while we're waiting for our baked beans to cook. And, okay... as we would have it. Oh, I got lucky. I've got a half a jar here. And earlier I told you about the 30-ounce jar of Miracle Whip. I'm going to use roughly half in the macaroni and half in the potato salad. I'm actually thinking we might use slightly less than half in the macaroni salad. I don't typically do a half of a bag of macaroni. So this is a learning process for me too. We're just kind of learn together, okay? So let's start. We're gonna, you know what? We're gonna use about a quarter of a jar of Miracle Whip to start. And then we're gonna cross our fingers and hope for the best. All right, let me grab a spoon to mix this with. And I've told you before, I'm old school. I was taught, I don't know, depending on the age of my audience here, some of you might remember like your mother or your grandmother, and they would just start dumping stuff in and nothing was ever measured, and yet it always turned out good, and you're always like, how did they do that? They didn't even measure it. Okay, that's how I cook. So this is new for me. I'm gonna try to measure stuff. So kind of just bear with me here because I don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to try to start small, so I might end up, like if I tell you a half a teaspoon and it ends up like a tablespoon and I have to add like 3 teaspoons, just bear with me because I've never done this before where I actually had to measure stuff. So, what I need for this, well, let's stir in our Miracle Whip first. Be careful stirring because you don't want to break your macaroni. You don't want to smash them. So just kind of stir it, almost like you're folding it in. And slinging it across the stove like I just did. Let's try not to do that. Let's keep the food in the dish, okay? All right. Clean up my mess there. There we go. Okay, so for our seasonings, very basic. Salt, pepper, celery seed. That's it. So let me grab those. Alrighty. So we are going to use, I'm estimating here. So I'm going to try a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. And again, for me, it's all visual. And that actually looks really good. So I think that one's going to be good. I think a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper is going to be perfect for this. Then we're going to start with 1 teaspoon of salt. Now, it might seem like a lot, but salt is actually the key to both of these salads. So we're going to start with a teaspoon, and let's go from there. And then I think we're going to try a 1/2 teaspoon of the celery seed. And that's a no. Okay. Scratch up. 1 full teaspoon of celery seed. So we got a teaspoon of celery seed. Supply, we got a teaspoon of salt. And we have a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Alright, stir this together. And then the veggies that we chopped up earlier, we're going to grab those. I put mine in the fridge. Hopefully yours isn't out getting all warm and soggy on the counter. Alright, so all of our cucumbers go in that. Our tomatoes. Now, I did chew. I chopped 2 decent-sized tomatoes up. Again, this pretty much goes by personal preference. If you like more, add more. If you don't like tomatoes all that much, you might want to just add 1. And I'm old school. I'm going to go by the look of it and see if I needed to add another one. And then remember, where'd my rag go? Okay. Also remember the onions. We are not using all these onions. We are using 1/2 of them. So add 1/2 of the onions to your macaroni salad. And the other 1/2, just cover back up, throw it back in the fridge until we're done and we get into our potato salad. Alright, now we're going to mix this all up, and this is where you're going to start seeing where it starts to dry out a little bit and where we start modifying with the Miracle Whip. So, we want to get this a good mix because we got all those seasonings there. We just really want to make sure everything is well coated with all those seasonings. And honestly, you know what? I was wrong. Our Miracle Whip's not looking bad. Okay, surprised myself on that one. Alright, now here is where we're going to have a bit of an issue. Because you can't exactly test this before it's really cold for salt. If you try to test it now and it needs more salt, whenever it gets really cold, it might end up too salty. So what we're going to do is throw a lid on this and we're going to refrigerate this for at least an hour, possibly a couple hours. Overnight would even be better. I don't know what you're making these for, so that comes down to you. But you want this nice and chilled before we do the taste test and see if it needs anything else. So I'm going to cover this up, throw it in the fridge, and then I'm still waiting for my potatoes and my eggs to cool down. I got about another 20 minutes or so till my hour's up, and then I'm going to check on those. And so I'll see you whenever those are cool and we're ready to go. So we got our potatoes. They're not quite chilled, but they're cool enough that we can work with it. And our eggs, slightly warm. Not too bad. I'm not going to burn my hands on that, so I'm good with that one. And then our other half of our onions. Now, I still have this quarter of a jar of Miracle Whip. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the rest of this up in the potatoes. Now, these potatoes, these can be kind of tricky because you cannot smash. If you smash them, you're going to end up with like a mashed potato consistency, and you don't want that. You want to make sure you keep your chunks of potatoes in chunk form. Don't mash them up. So, very carefully, you're going to fold this Miracle Whip in to the potatoes. So, I'm just starting with this quarter of a jar because that's what I had left. I actually only used a quarter of a jar in my macaroni salad. However, once that gets completely chilled, the macaroni salad, I mean, we will possibly add about another half a cup or a cup of Miracle Whip to it, just to make sure it's not too dry. And that's when I'm going to do a taste test to check for the celery seed, the pepper, and the salt. Okay, so I got my quarter of a jar of a 30-ounce jar of Miracle Whip in my potatoes. And then I'm also going to do, you know what? Let's just stick with what we did. Let's do 1 teaspoon of salt. This is copying pretty much what we did for the macaroni salad. And then we're also going to do that quarter of a teaspoon of pepper. On this one, I'm going to double it. I'm going to do another quarter. So we're going to do a half of a teaspoon of pepper for the potato salad. Okay. Stick with the 1 teaspoon of salt for now. Again, this is one of those things that you really can't taste test it until it's chilled. You need it to be chilled. Because if it's not chilled, like if it's just lukewarm or, you know, room temperature, you're going to taste it and think, oh, that needs a little bit of salt. But then once it's chilled, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I added too much salt. I've done this before. Tried and true. This is a lesson I've learned. Believe me on this. Let's do a 1 teaspoon of salt for now, and then we'll go from there. Now, I'm going to crack open my eggs, get those shells off. And I probably should have grabbed my cutting board first, huh? Alright, got my cutting board and my little paring knife. That's how you know I'm not a professional chef. I use a paring knife. You ever watch those cooking shows and everybody's like they're cutting little veggies and stuff with that great big chef's knife, and you're like, how are they doing that? Yeah, I don't know how. I am not that responsible with the knife. I would probably lose a finger or two over that. So, for my own safety, and so this doesn't turn into a horror video for you, I'm going to stick with the paring knife. You use whatever you're comfortable with, though. Doesn't matter to me if you're using a pocket knife. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Alright, well this is going to end up being very boring if you're going to sit here watching me shuck these. Yeah, I'm shucking corn. If you're going to watch me peel these eggs. So I tell you what, let me pause this video and I'll come back after this is all done. I'm probably going to clean them up a little bit. Just make sure all the shells are off of them because, you know, we don't want shells in our potato salad. So, let me finish peeling these and then I'll be right back. Alright. Got my shells off my eggs. I did a quick rinse just to make sure I didn't have any little tiny pieces of the shell still stuck in there. And then I patted them dry with a paper towel because we don't want these to be wet. We don't want that water being added into our potatoes after we waited this long for them to dry out and cool off. So, this the way I do my eggs, I cut them into thirds this way, like lengthwise. Cut them into thirds. So we ended up with 3 slices of an egg. Then from there, I'm going to cut them again into thirds this way. Let me show you that, okay? And then we're going to cut them into small chunks. That's maybe a 1/2 inch. And then we can add those straight into the potato salad. So I'm going to finish cutting these up and add them into the potato salad, and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm also going to add the other half of that onion that we diced up earlier. Remember, we put half in the macaroni salad, and we got half in our potato salad. And then, if I find my spoon, excuse-moi, we are just going to mix this together and fold it together. Alright, at this stage, when I started mixing together, clearly not enough Miracle Whip. So, it's so dry, I'm going to add at least another 1/4 of a jar. Again, this is a 30-ounce jar of Miracle Whip. So, let's have a 1/4 of a jar. Stir that in, kind of fold it in because we don't want to mash our potatoes. So, let's fold that in. Being careful not to smash those potatoes. Alright, that's starting to look a little bit better. Looking good. Alright, at this point, you got everything nice and mixed up in there. So, we are at the point where we're going to have to let this chill now. So, this is what we look like. We are not done with this, but we do need to cover this and let it chill in the fridge for at least an hour. Overnight if possible. And since one of my team members got off work, I got to pull a double tonight. So I only have time to let it go for an hour. And so in an hour, we will check on this and finish it up. I'm going to cover that up, put it in the fridge. And I'm going to pull my baked beans out. And we'll go from there and test our macaroni salad. And just make sure all my seasonings are right, because again, I've never measured this before. I always taste tested throughout. So this is something new for me. And I still have a 1/2 jar of Miracle Whip left. So I did use an entire jar of them. The 1/2 jar that I had in the fridge and a 1/2 jar of my new one. So for the record. Alright, let me get this covered and put it in the fridge. And then get my baked beans pulled out, and I'll be back in an hour to do our taste testing, and I'll show you the baked beans, how the finished product turned out, and we'll go from there. Okay, see you in a bit. Alrighty, I got my macaroni salad and my potato salad out of the fridge. We've chilled for an hour. Just got to uncover everything here. Also wanted to show you our baked beans. Doesn't that look delicious? Oh, and it smells delicious. Seriously, I say this all the time. We need a smell-o-vision. To smell these is just amazing. Okay, so what we want to do first is we want to go ahead and stir this. Now, if you left yours sit overnight, it might look a little bit dry to you. And if it does, it's fine. Add like a 1/2 cup of Miracle Whip, up to maybe a cup. We don't want this to look dry. So stir this up. I'm going to taste it because salt is the key ingredient in this. You might not believe it, but it truly is. That's perfect. That's Mama's. That was Mama's and Grandma's macaroni salad. Just absolutely perfect. Not doing another thing to that. The only thing I might do is take some napkins or some paper towels. Clean up the edges of the bowl just to make it look prettier. Because if you followed my other videos, you know I'm a lot about appearances too. Especially, you know, always have that little touch of green in my sauce meals and stuff like that. You want it to look good too. Okay. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So this is going back in the fridge until my picnic with my dear friend Faith tomorrow. Alright. One down. Next. Get rid of the dirty fork. We don't want to reuse that. Nothing is grosser to me than someone tasting something and then using the same utensil to put it back in. That's just so disgusting. Okay. Same with the potato salad. We're going to stir it up. Again, being careful because you don't want this to get mushy. We don't want mashed potatoes. We want this to be potato salad. So you want chunks of potatoes in it. Okay. Give it a quick taste test. Fingers crossed. Oh. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Again, if you've let yours sit for a while and it seems a little dry, add between a quarter of a cup to a cup, or between half a cup to a cup of Miracle Whip. Stir that in. Always start with the smaller amount first and stir it in because you can always add more to it, but once you've added it, you can't take it back out. So start with the smaller amount, add like a half a cup, stir it in, fold it in, and that should take care of any dryness, especially if it sits overnight. Now, if you serve some of this and you have leftovers and the next day you notice it being dry, just add a couple of tablespoons and mix it in and just keep adding a couple of tablespoons until it's no longer a dry consistency. Because a lot of times sitting in the fridge, especially depending on how tightly you have the container stored, it can dry out. Now, I found these cute little containers. I don't know if I got these at like a Dollar Tree or if I found them at Walmart or whatever, but these are perfect for putting salads in. And I didn't do this yet for my macaroni salad because, like I said, a team member called off. I got to get my butt to work and pull double duty tonight. So I'm going to have to get up at the break of dawn and get this ready before my friend comes and gets me, before we head out in the morning. So I will get everything else done in the morning, behind the scenes. I'm just showing you this for now. And then what we're going to do, and again, this is all about appearances. So after I get, now if you're just doing a bowl, obviously you'll be skipping this step. You probably have it in whatever bowl. I could have used this bowl and just, like you did with macaroni salad, just kind of cleaned up the edges a little bit to make it appear neater. But, you know, I'm fussy. You don't have to be as fussy as me. If you don't want to clean up your edges, don't clean up your edges. It's all about having fun. Don't make cooking stressful. Just have fun in the kitchen. And this is barely going to fit. Alright, beautiful. Okay, and then what I like to do, again, it's a lot about appearance, but it also does have some effect on the taste. Let me get my edges cleaned up here, because I did make a bit of a mess. And I always have on hand a bunch of paper towels or napkins. I want to go out to Subway or McDonald's or Burger King. Actually, our Burger King around here don't like to give you napkins, but alright, and then we're going to take some paprika and we're just going to sprinkle it over the top of this. And that one's about empty, which is why I got another one. Oh, look how pretty that is. And then if you have a bowl, you're going to just sprinkle it across the whole top of it. Look how amazing that looks. Tastes amazing. Looks amazing. Alright, perfect. So there's the potato salad. This out of our way. Alright, and last, but certainly not least, is our baked beans. Now at this point, mine are still warm. And again, you can serve them hot, serve them warm, let them cool off, chill them in the fridge, however you want to do this. Everybody's different, I think, on their beans. We just want to make sure that all our brown sugar has dissolved into that sauce and that it's not overly sweet. Oh, and again, perfect. So, Faith, hope you love all this stuff I'm doing for you for tomorrow. You know I love you, girl. Okay. And then I'm going to put a lid on this, put it in the fridge because I'm not using this till tomorrow for our picnic. Alright, and then I'm going to, at some later point, because time's sticking down on me, I'm going to put that macaroni salad in a container like this one. Take it on our picnic tomorrow. I know we're not going to eat that much, but guess what? Makes for great leftovers. So Susie, my sister, and I can have this again on Sunday for leftovers. So there we have it. I'll just make something with it, maybe some chicken or something. But so this is my doctored up baked beans, my family's recipe for macaroni salad and potato salad. I think I'll dub this picnic sides or something to that effect. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button down there and hit the subscribe button so you know whenever I have a new video. And go check out some of my other videos. I look forward to seeing you next week here. And I have no clue what we're going to end up making. We've done breakfast, we've done pastas, we've done meatloafs, we've done some sides. Maybe we'll try a dessert. Not much of a baker. That's my younger sister that does the baking. But who knows? Maybe we'll give it a shot. So until next time, remember, hit like, hit subscribe. Have a great day.